And happy SEL Day, everybody. Wow, what an amazing day. Those of you who've been with this SEL Day Summit live stream since 9 a.m. Eastern this morning, there have been just really powerful sessions on a whole range of topics related to this year's theme. And we've got another really fabulous, important session for you right now. I'm Jim Vetter. I'm the Executive Director of the Social Emotional Learning Alliance for the United States. And along with the Urban Assembly and our international partner, 6 Seconds, we are the folks putting on this global celebration of social emotional learning with this year's theme, Today's Students, Tomorrow's Leaders. Before we dive into the session right now, we'd like to give a big thank you to the sponsors who have made SEL Day possible. Our advocate sponsor, which is Antioch University, our supporters, Second Step, and Perez, and Harmony from National University, as well as our promoters, Responsive Classroom and Fly 5, Ruler from the Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence, and Satchel Pulse. You can find out more about all of these amazing organizations by going to selday.org/exhibit. But I'd like to just give a little special thank you to Antioch University as our advocate sponsor. Antioch's mission is to provide learner-centered education to empower students with the knowledge and skills to lead meaningful lives and advance social, racial, economic, and environmental justice. And in partnership with 6 Seconds, Antioch now has one of the only specifically SEL and social justice focused doctoral programs. So you want to go over there to the exhibit, look at the Antioch page there, and learn a lot more about what they do. This session right now takes a really interesting play on our topic of today's students, tomorrow's leaders. And this is about today's leader, who was not too long ago, was yesterday's youth. And this session is being hosted by the Social Emotional Learning Alliance for Connecticut. And I will kick it over to Ashton from SEL for Connecticut to introduce our session.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Happy SEL Day and International Women's Day. Thank you guys all for joining us today. This is SEL for CT's first ever summit appearance. I am Ashton Gauthier, SEL for CT's coordinator at the Connecticut Network for Children and Youth. A large part of this session is going to be showing you all about the connection between emotional well-being and academic success. By providing folks from birth to adult with the skills of self-awareness and self-regulation, relationship building skills, SEL can cultivate a supportive and safe environment for learning and personal growth to happen. And I believe through intentional integration into classrooms or program practices, SEL fosters some resilience and empowers individuals to take on challenges with confidence and empathy. For youth, all of these lead to improved academic outcomes and an overall holistic youth development. Today, we're going to talk to Aridyan about her journey from student to leader at the network and how SEL has equipped her to continue growing and thriving. Before we start, I just wanted to give you all some context about what makes this session so unique. I have been at the network for 10 months now, and on my first day, last April, I walked into my welcome breakfast with my new colleagues, and moments later, Aridyan walked in. She's a former student at the high school that I worked at. She was a sophomore the year that it was my first year as a student affairs manager at Common Ground High School in New Haven. I was 26 years old when I started there, and Aridyan is 26 today. So what makes this session so special is this work, right? Like SEL work coming full circle. So from a former student with whom I had a part in shaping her SEL journey to now at the network, she's our communications and design specialist. Leading up to this week, she had helped plan and execute SEL for CT's first social media campaign. And now she's going to help you understand how she built her skills and how they've grown over the years, and why SEL was and still is crucial to her learning journey. So Aridyan, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Hi, everyone. Good afternoon. My name is Aridyan Perez. I'm 26 years old. I was born in Bridgeport, Connecticut, and I currently live in New Haven, Connecticut. And I went to Common Ground High School, and I graduated in 2015. And I went to the University of Hartford for 2 years. And then I transferred and continued my journey at Central Connecticut State University, and I graduated in 2020. And now I am the communications and design specialist for the Connecticut Network for Children and Youth.
Thanks so much for being here and giving us this opportunity to really learn from your experience. So I just want to take you back to high school, and they're going to put an overlay slide up for us around the POWER acronym that Common Ground High School used. And so their acronym was for POWER. And it's pride, ownership, wonder, effort, and respect. These attributes align with the SEL framework, and it encompasses many social and emotional competencies, as you can see. So Aridyan, you were born in Bridgeport. You've lived in New Haven all your life. You consider yourself a city girl. So how is that? That's a large aspect of your life, right? So how did going to an environmental high school affect that? And what SEL skills did you use to navigate being in an environmental social justice high school?
Just to preface, I do have a bit of a cough. I am recovering from a cold, so please bear with me. But yes, so, Common Ground was an environmental high school. And so a lot of our classes had this sort of like outside aspect to them and some sort of element of environmentalism built in. So as someone who does consider themselves semi-high maintenance, I'm not a huge fan of the outdoors. I'm not a huge fan of bugs. It was really challenging to be in that environment for 4 years. But coming from such a traumatic middle school experience, I was happy to be in a new environment. I came from a middle school where, doing your best really wasn't enough and you had to be perfect. And they really pushed that whole perfectionism narrative. So coming to Common Ground was actually a breath of fresh air. And, so that was that. So I ended up at an environmental high school. And I was really nervous because I learned that most of my classes would be outside and have this outside element to them. So, I wasn't a huge fan of that because I didn't want to get my clothes dirty. I didn't want to have to touch dirt, which I definitely ended up doing many times. And so, I said in my head, this school is going to be my home for the next 4 years. So I had to come up with some solutions. So I brought a change of clothes to, be more comfortable. It allowed me to engage in my classes more. And the other students made fun of me for doing this, but they were getting their nice clothes dirty and I was just chilling in my sweats. So, and speaking of having to take classes outside, do I have a story for all of you? So, one of my science classes, our assignment was that we had to observe bees. And I think we were learning about like bug life cycles or something like that. And we had this huge beehive backyard, like where our farm was. And so my teacher told all of us that we were going to be going to this hive to observe these bees and that we had to take notes on everything that we saw. And I actually have a huge fear of bees. So as you can imagine, I was not very happy about having to do this assignment. And so after class, I pulled my teacher to the side and I was like, hey, like, I have this like huge fear of bees. I'm not really, comfortable being near them. Is there something alternative that I can do to, make up for the assignment? And he was like, no, unfortunately, like, this is part of the assignment and this is something that you have to do. But we came to a compromise and he was like, okay, you don't have to stand as close as everybody else. You can stand at a distance that feels comfortable to you. And I was like, okay, fine. Like, I'll take that. And so that's what we agreed on. So, the day comes, my anxiety is absolutely through the roof. I'm like shaking, I'm sweating. Everybody else is really excited for some reason. And, they're all like running to the hive and they're like really excited. And I am just like dripping in fear. Like I can already hear the buzzing in my ears and my anxiety is just like through the roof. So, everybody's like basically under the hive. I'm standing at a very comfortable distance. And unfortunately, the person leading the whole explanation was not being very understanding of my emotions and my feelings and was like, hey, like, you have to come stand closer because I'm about to start explaining all of these things and you need to hear what I'm saying. And I was like, no, like, I'm good over here. Like, my teacher said it's okay for me to stand here. And they were like, no, like, you need to come closer because you need to hear all of this information. And I was like, no, like I'm good. Like, I'm okay here. And so they were giving me a really hard time about it. The buzzing is like really loud and it's making me anxious. Like all the other kids are making fun of me because I don't want to be near the hive. So as you can imagine, it was a very emotionally charged situation. All of those things happening at once. But I pushed through and I ended up getting the assignment done. Now, did I get the best grade? No, but I still passed and I still did it.
Of course. I mean, you had to. I mean, I think it was a nice compromise of your teacher, to say like, these are the limits. Like, this is what you can, what you can do. I think when I hear this story, when I hear everything that you just talked about, so first, like your self-awareness and like your self-management skills, like speak really loudly here. It sounds like just from the start, like you had a vision for yourself in your new high school and ambition and curiosity to keep learning and growing, right? As a person. And you were able to develop some like really practical solutions from the very beginning, just like with bringing your change of clothes, managing your anxiety, overcoming a fear of bees, all while feeling like an adult wasn't really being super supportive or understanding of these feelings, right? Like, honestly, no one is perfect. And perhaps it was just, maybe a missed opportunity here.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, those 4 years were a humbling experience for sure. But they definitely contributed to the person that I am today. And I really had to, envision myself as a member of this new community. And I needed to adapt. And, I had to use problem solving skills that I didn't even know I had.
I mean, honestly, like I know what it's like getting 18 sophomore students out onto the campus with a time restraint and a lesson to complete. Like, I understand all that. And like, I also know how much I cared about all of you. And so that leads me to my next question. Who was the most influential person who helped you through high school?
The most influential person who helped me through high school was definitely my math teacher, Mrs. Jackson. I struggled a lot with math when I was younger, and she was the only teacher I had that was able to break down math in a way that made it easier for me to understand. So the way that she would do it, which no other teacher that I had done before, was that she broke everything down in steps and she used real world examples to help me work through the lessons. So like, for example, she knew that I liked shopping. So whenever it was like a problem about money, she would be like relating it to like me being in the mall, which was like really cool. Um, and so, and it was being in her class that I actually learned about like my like learning style and like how my brain processes information. And it is through steps. Like, it's just easier for me when someone breaks something down in steps. And, not being good at math, it was like one of my biggest insecurities. So, as my confidence raised in math, it allowed me to feel like, I was capable of doing anything. And something that helped a lot too was that she was very patient. So this definitely allowed me to process the information a lot more. Because other teachers that I've had, like I would ask like all these questions, all these like clarifying questions. And they would I could visibly see that they were like getting frustrated with me. And it made me not, want to like ask any more questions, or like it made me afraid to like dive deeper. But she would give me the space to ask as many questions as I needed. I'm someone, I need a lot of clarification, especially if it's something that I don't understand. But she never got frustrated with the amount of questions that I asked. She was like, please, like, ask all the questions you need. I want you to walk away from class like not being confused and understanding what we learned for the day. And if you need to ask 30 questions to get there, like, please do it. So that was definitely very encouraging for me.
Yeah. And I mean, if you had questions, I'm sure 5 other, students might have also had those same questions, I think that, you spoke mainly to like, your, you being with her like during math. But I also know you guys built like a pretty strong relationship, right? And I think that sort of touches on the importance of like those supportive relationships at school, particularly the relationship between educators and youth. So by her being able to provide like these real world examples, giving you more context, giving you the space, right, to ask the questions that you needed to ask, helped you realize or give you like those aha moments, or the fact that like, I can do this, right? I can, and it built your confidence is what you said, right? It built your confidence around math. And I would say, I mean, I think that she really skillfully conveyed, and modeled SEL skills to you. And I also think it's a reminder that sometimes educators can really underestimate their impact and like the depth of their influence. Sometimes we're gonna have to make sure that she sees this for sure. So Miss Jackson, like most teachers at Common Ground High School, they were responsible for a guidance class. This class met 4 days a week. It was similar to like a homeroom, but often referred to as like guidance families within the larger community of Common Ground. I can tell everybody exactly how the curriculum evolved over my years at Common Ground, but I won't bore you with those details. Instead, Aridyan, why don't you talk to everybody about your guidance class?
So my guidance class focused a lot on community building. We would have a community service day twice a year, and my class actually got to develop a relationship with a local nonprofit over those 4 years. And our volunteer work, we mainly focused on like children and teaching them environmental issues, which was really cool because we were essentially teaching them all the things that we were learning in school, which was really nice. And then, like the kids that we work with, they came from all over the state. Some of them had some behavioral challenges. So, we had to help them learn, like, even though they were having a difficult time, while also, managing our own emotions as teenagers, before we can even teach them anything. And it was a struggle at first, but like eventually, like my class, we all figured out how to work together and like figured out each other's like, working styles. And it didn't happen overnight, but because we were all strangers at first, it was awkward.
Mm-hmm.
But as we got to know each other, we learned how to work better together.
And so this class, you guys spent 4 years in the same class together. So they were part of like your graduating class. And And so when I hear you talk about sort of like these experiences with like youth during community service days, and like building community within your guidance, right? And learning how to work together, and really fostering that sense of belonging, in that community. I can't help but wonder if you realized back then that this was one of the purposes behind this guidance class, building relationships and curiosity.
Yeah. It's funny because I didn't actually. I didn't know that like the point of, because we had 3 separate guidance classes in my graduating class, and I didn't know that we were all supposed to be like focused on like community building and partnerships. I had this idea in my head, and I don't really know why, that like each one had like a different theme, and that like my guidance class just focused a lot on like partnerships and community building, but I didn't realize at the time that like we were all supposed to be doing that anyway. So
Yeah. So guidance, like a lot of other classes at Common Ground, like involved like a lot of hands-on exploring. And it was supposed to like really encourage that collaboration and the communication and critical thinking skills, and give you lots of opportunities, not only you all, but like also for, the educator, to really help build on those SEL skills. So guidance time had like a lot of opportunities to connect, all of the students with either off-campus programs, internships, and jobs. And you attended the True Colors Conference at UConn. It is now called Pride and led by a different organization. But can you talk about that and what SEL skills it allowed you to build on?
yeah, so attending True Colors actually influenced a lot of things that I did down the line in my life. So I joined Common Ground's GSA, which was the Gay Straight Alliance. And then when I went to UHeart, I joined Spectrum, which is like kind of their version of that. And then when I went to CCSU, I joined their Pride Club, which was like also their version of that. And in my job now at the network, I am part of our DEIB committee, which is Diversity, Equity, Inclusion, and Belonging. And I think going to True Colors, it definitely sparked my huge passion that I have for LGBTQ plus rights and representation. And pride and respect was a huge part of True Colors for me. I really got to develop my confidence because I was finally surrounded by people that I identified with. And, it made me feel this like sense of like community and, belonging. And I finally had the language to put to and like describe a lot of the things that I was experiencing like in my personal life. And even just like learning about the issues within the community. I mean, after my first True Colors, I definitely wanted to become more involved with advocacy. So I started to attend more GSA meetings because, before I would kind of just go like here and there as like a hobby to like just like waste time. But after True Colors, I was like, no, like I really want to like get involved and like get down to the nitty gritty of it. And and True Colors was really cool because I got the opportunity to connect with like so many different people and like hear their stories. And I formed connections with them. And every year I would go back and I would see the same people and like they would remember me. And it felt really good to like, create those my own connections like outside of school.
I mean, in this experience, I feel like you gained so much. Like you gained a deeper understanding of like your own identity and like values, right? Like you chose to become more involved in activism, like based on this, experience. And you went all 4 years, right? So, you went from high school GSA to 2 colleges, doing a similar program to now, the networks, being on the network's DEIB team. I think it really demonstrates your commitment to connecting and, building relationships in an inclusive, safe space. And you continue to support like those evolving values too. And if I haven't told you already, I'm really proud of the human that you are. Okay. Tell me about your exposure to college and high school and then navigating college life.
So when it came to my, starting my college journey, I met someone very special to me in high school. And her name was Miss Quay, and she actually influenced me in a very special way. So I'm not to bash myself, but I am someone who, kind of tends to like daydream a lot. I have my head in the clouds a lot. I look at things in a way that like aren't exactly realistic, like more in like a dreamy sort of way.
I consider that self-awareness. So I think that's
yeah, yeah. I think about things like, and they don't necessarily match up with like what I need in my life.
Mm-hmm.
But Miss Quay taught me the importance of looking at things through that realistic lens, especially when it, came to figuring out college and like my future. And she gave us so much information and so much resources about college because I think me and everybody else was just super lost when it came to that. So she would actually have like students from actual colleges and universities, come into our classes and talk to us about like financial aid, general college information, like the workload, which was like super helpful for me because, I'm a very visual learner and like actually like seeing someone like talk about college was really helpful for me. And she would arrange these amazing college trips, and we would actually go to these universities like in person and like take a tour of like the entire campus, like even like sometimes have lunch there, which was pretty cool. And she helped us like fill out our college applications, helped us like narrow down our options of where we wanted to go, especially when it came to like the financial side of it. And at the time I didn't really appreciate like her realistic perspective because I was young and naive and emotional. And but now I look back and I'm so thankful that she was the way that she was, because it is important to kind of like learn how to take yourself back down to earth. And at the time, I thought that she was being sort of discouraging, but now as an adult I realized she was being encouraging, and she always encouraged all of us to do what made the most sense for our lives.
Yeah. Yeah, Miss Fay is an exceptional human. She, really helped you understand not only though like the college experience and the logistics of that, but she did it in a way that was like strategically scaffolded to help you understand like even some pieces of like your identity coupled with like, developing those like responsible decision making skills, which you went on to have to really use. So why don't you dive in a little bit about your college experience?
Oh man, my college experience was quite a doozy. So I started my journey at the University of Hartford, like I mentioned. So for my freshman and sophomore year, I went there. I started out as a psych major, but then I ended up switching to communications like at the end of my freshman year. And I switched because I didn't really find my psych classes as interesting as I thought I would. I would catch myself like staring at the clock because I just did not want to be there and I wanted to leave. So I switched to communications because I figured I love writing. I'm really good at writing. And I love, any opportunity to use my creativity was perfect. So I thought that it was a good major for me to switch to.
Mm-hmm.
But unfortunately, due to some financial reasons, I had to leave UHeart. And my best friend at the time, she went to Central and she was like, oh, like, you should come transfer here so that, you can come to school with me. And I was like, okay. So I ended up applying, and I got in immediately. And I continued my communications journey at CCSU. But being a transfer student comes with some minor setbacks. So I was actually a super senior, which means that I finished my undergrad in 5 years instead of the traditional 4, which did, take a little bit of a hit to my self-esteem.
I know, I know you're disappointed with graduating in 5 years instead of 4, and you feel that is a failure. I do not, but your feelings are valid here. And so to talk about failure is a natural part, right, of like the learning process, and setbacks should be seen as opportunities for growth. Then and not to give up, right? And you didn't. So like your resilience and adaptability, shines through here. So between recognizing like your academic interests and your strength and switching your majors and transferring, despite facing all those obstacles, you continue to pursue, your academic goals, and you graduated. That's a huge success, right? So during your time at CCSU, you did an internship, and I want you to talk about that experience a little bit.
Yeah, so my best friend, he was working for a company called Sodexo. And for those of you who don't know, Sodexo is the dining service that CCSU uses. And, he was just like helping serve food in the kitchen. So he told me that they were actually looking for an intern to help with their social media, and that I was the first person that he thought of. So, he told me that they were going to have an internship fair and that they were going to be there tabling at the fair, and that I should stop by and I should apply. And so I did that. I filled out my application. I, talked to them for a little bit. I left my contact information, and then a week later, they emailed me because they wanted a second interview. And then after that second interview, they hired me on the spot. And so I was so excited because I was like finally doing something where I would get to, exercise my skills. And, I had a job in the field that I was studying, and that was really cool. And so, I used like a lot of the skills that I learned in my classes. Like I, created video content. I, did the graphics for like the menus every week. I had to post on social media. I had to come up with all these like cool events around food. So like one that I'm really proud of is like we did like a 90s like throwback night, and like we had like dinosaur chicken nuggets and like rainbow macaroni, and all the students loved it, and they just thought that it was awesome. And so for my internship, I would say that I pretty much used all of Power and all of SEL for that experience.
Yeah. I mean, I think a piece of it too, like your internship required like an understanding of like the students, like the community's like needs and preferences, right? And you being able to like create that content to enhance, student life or residential life, demonstrates a wide range of awareness that you had to have too, and that you needed to tap into.
Yeah, and college students are a tough crowd.
So are high schoolers.
Yeah, no, for sure. I don't know how you did it, but yeah. But speaking of opportunities, I also got the really cool opportunity to study abroad. Now, it's kind of a crazy story how this happened. So originally, I was supposed to go to Italy in 2020 for one of my comm classes. It was like a upper level, like 500 level class. But unfortunately, the trip was canceled due to COVID. I was devastated because Italy was like always one of my dream destinations. I'd always dreamed of going there. But fast forward 2 years later, and my professor, her name was Professor Ritzenhoff, she emailed me asking if I wanted to go. And of course I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
And so now you're probably, right, sign me up. You're probably wondering, how did you get to go on this trip even though you already graduated? Well, Professor Ritzenhoff, again, was someone very special that I met through my academic journey. Her and I formed a really close bond, just like with previous classes that I'd had with her. And she always considered me, her words, not mine, her star student. Basically because like I would always participate. I always engaged in conversation during class, turned in all my work and my projects on time. And so she sensed that I had this like hunger to learn and like this hunger for knowledge. And she always said that that made me stand out to her.
Yeah, again, that those relationship, building coupled with like the experience of traveling abroad, had to have made like such a huge, impact in your life. And I know graduating college during COVID, right, and losing out on experiences were a lot, but I mean, you got to make up for it a little bit. I think a lot of us are still dealing sort of with the anger and the trauma, right, and the impacts of COVID. And you had to go out and get your first job with your degree, and you joined the network.
Yes, I was hired during COVID. So, just everybody, just imagine for a second, right? You're 22 years old, finishing college online, graduating, starting your first real job during a global pandemic, and the universe just like is like, here you go. Here's all of this for you to deal with.
Yeah. So what do you think was challenging about working at a new job during COVID, and how you navigated some of those challenges?
I think the most challenging part for me was like figuring out a routine for myself because, like I mentioned before, like I'm a very like I just need steps, I'm a very like steps routine person. So, I still lived at home at the time, so my bedroom had to double as my office, and so many people mentioned like, oh, like, having your resting space in the same space you work, like it's not good for you, it's not healthy, it's not good for your mental health. But I'm like, I didn't have a choice. Like I still lived at home.
Right.
So everyone was like, oh, like, like those two things should always be separated. But I didn't have that choice. So I had to create small changes. And one of the first small changes that I made was that I actually changed out of my pajamas every day and like wore actual clothing. Which is really funny because people are always like, oh, like, you get to work from home, like you get to work in your pajamas. And I could not do that. Like I had to create that mental separation for myself. Like, okay, like this is home mode and then this is work mode.
Yeah.
And so then I had like a whiteboard with all of my daily tasks on it. And like when I would finish working, I would cover it with like a cloth, like every time, every day, because again, like I had to create that separation between like, okay, now it's time to work and now it's time to relax. And just doing like those two small things, it really created like a huge change for me mentally. And it got me into that routine, which is really important. And, like I think back and there were so many situations I went through in my journey that were like new and uncomfortable, like, similar to this one. Like I went to a school where, I had to do classes outside and then I had to finish college online. And I really had to adapt to each new situation, even though it was really rough. But through effort, I learned a lot about perseverance. And, even though a lot of these situations I went through, they like affected my emotions tremendously. I had like a lot of letdowns, a lot of heartbreaks, but I still continued to push through. And the reason why I was able to do that was because I had goals and I came up with, strategies to achieve those goals. I had to learn adaptability. Adaptability, it's like the main theme of this chat. It's the main theme of my life. Adaptability has played a huge role in my life journey. Like I could have lost my cool at any time, but I didn't. And I didn't graduate in the 4 years like I planned and like dreamed of doing. I still pushed myself. I still got my degree, even though I didn't feel great about having to do an extra year of school. Um, I still did it. And, I was going through COVID, I got a new job, but that was just another obstacle and I persevered.
Adaptability and perseverance, right? Both components of SEL, contributing to, emotional intelligence, that resiliency, right? So how will doing something like this summit, right, like help you achieve your additional like personal and professional goals that you might have?
So a lot of the goals that I have in the future actually involve me being in front of a camera and speaking. So any opportunity that I get to speak in front of an audience is good practice for me. I mean, I want to start a podcast this year. I, want to start posting my makeup looks on like my personal Instagram again. So again, involve me being in front of a camera. So for this experience today, I can watch it again and like see what I need to do better for next time. I'm not really comfortable being in front of the camera. Like, hopefully you won't be able to tell. But I can say that I completed this session and now this is one of my accomplishments.
Aridyan, you're a natural. What do you want people to walk away from here knowing, right? If you're a student or if you're a teacher, yeah. What do you want them to know?
So this is, going to sound cliche and people have said this 8 million times, but, as a student, don't be afraid to try new things. And, I know so many people say that and it's easier said than done, but like, seriously, don't be afraid to try new things. Like, I would know because like I suffer from anxiety and my biggest barrier is that I think of everything that could possibly go wrong before it even happens.
That's the definition of anxiety, I'm pretty sure.
But try to challenge yourself because I realized something really important, and it's if you don't challenge yourself, you're not growing, and growth is important. Like, obviously, have those healthy boundaries for yourself. That's extremely important too. But try to push yourself once in a while, even if it's something in your daily routine that like you want to switch up for a day. Like, try it and do it and see how you feel. Figure out what you need to do for yourself to show up for yourself, because showing up for yourself is so important. And I would say, as an educator, don't assume that your style of teaching is one size fits all. You have to allow your students the space to ask as many questions as they need. And I know, it can be really frustrating and it can seem like, like your class is like slowing down. But if it takes 50 questions for your students to understand what, you're teaching, then like let them. That's how they're going to learn. And ultimately, you want them to walk away knowing what you're teaching. And for every one student that has, those multiple questions, there's probably 5 others in the class that have the same questions. So really take the time to, figure out how your students learn, how they process information, because it can make a huge difference for them, because it definitely made a huge difference for me.
Yeah. And like she learned who you were, how you process information, able to relate to you, and built that foundation, built that relationship with you. You are definitely a force to be reckoned with. And you will do amazing things in this world. So, I mean, SEL skills make a huge difference through the educational lens. The goal is to foster positive and supportive environments for both youth and educators. So providing SEL helps everyone, right? Build relationships, learn more about their own emotions and triggers to deal with conflict when it comes up. And in turn, that creates a more productive learning environment. With SEL skills, and educators can build connections with youth, making them feel like they belong and that they're valued, all like encouraging and motivating them you know, to even really own their own learning experience. We know SEL, you know, fosters a culture of support and empowerment for everyone to thrive and pursue their goals like Aridyan. And if you're looking for any more resources on SEL, for your classroom, for your programs, please reach out to info@selforct.org or visit our website. A big thank you to Aridyan, and a big thank you to all of you for tuning in.
Thank you so much to both of you. Aridyan, Ashton, thank you for a fabulous session. I'd like to invite folks who are here with us, participants, to go ahead and type in the chat. What would you say, what is one of your key takeaways from this session? So think about that for a second, and just go ahead and type in the chat. What is one of your key takeaways from this fabulous session? As you're doing that, I'm going to let you know about the next session that's coming up, which is our final SEL Day Summit session of 2024. The next session that's going to come up right at the top of the hour is, again, focusing on our theme of today's students, tomorrow's leaders. The session that's coming up is today's students, tomorrow's leaders, the student perspective. So continuing to build on what was happening in this session, that this final session is going to be an all-student panel session where you have the chance to hear directly from students about the current challenges they're facing and how their schools are, or maybe how their schools should be addressing these issues that may be related to mental health, school climate and culture, DEI, college and career readiness, SEL, life skills, social media, and a lot more. And this session, the session you're just in right now, was hosted by SEL for Connecticut. Our final session of the day will be going all the way across the country and is hosted by SEL for California. So again, thank you to our panelists for this session, and we will see you over in a couple seconds. Over at the top of the hour, we'll see you for our final session of the day. Again, thanks so much.